was a woman that was sick with the issue of blood. For 12 good years, this woman have been suffering, no solution, no solution. My Bible tell me, say, she does suffer so many things from many doctors' hand. When she go to one native doctor, they go tell am say, make she kill the goat. She go for another native doctor. They go tell am say, make she kill the fowl. This woman don't go for the best hospital for this life. Doctor tell am say they don't know the name of his sickness, not to talk up to know the cure. Every day I problem they increase every day. This woman don't go for fake prophet hand. Prophet tell her say they go naked and back for river. They naked them, the back for river. They tell her say make she go like the black and yellow candle. She likes the black and yellow candle finish. Every day a problem they increase every day. This woman don't suffer many things for this life, just to make sure say healing will come. In mama run, in papa run, sister run, her husband run. Everybody when she get run away from her, people tell am say, madam, you the smell. This woman don't sell all her property. So this thing now only one rapper now remain, only one. She go wash up for night, tie up for morning. Every day a problem day, this every day. She go lie down, she go they come they cry. She go say, God, which can wahala na be this? Why you create me at all, daddy? Why my mama born me at all? So one day she hears say Jesus the pass. Now she talk say, I want to see him. Meanwhile, she don't hear of many good things when Jesus the do for people. People tell us, Mother, you know go fit to see him because that Jesus na very busy person. And you know say you the smell. This Jesus is not go get time for you. The woman say, I just believe, I just believe. Say na only me go see him. And when I go see him, na only touch I go touch him. Because if I touch she said, if I touch if you touch him, if it's the only way I can, when the DJ came, my people, the Bible says the crowd was too much. This woman, she began to struggle. As she the struggle, the push her come out. She took another step of faith. She came timing, she came pressing, and she came calculating. As she was coming, people began to give way for her. People began to give way for her because of her author. I say your wahala go bring breakthrough for you. I say your problem go bring breakthrough for you. Amen. This woman, she came timing, she came pressing, and she came calculating. When nobody was expecting, she marched forward. And that place, she grabbed the master's wrapper. From that minute, the pool of blood dried up.
Hey, good morning, my friends, my colleagues, my viewers. Welcome back to our weekly program where we take a text or a verse or a chapter from the book and then we study together and see what we can learn from it. And if possible, whatever we've learned, we try as much as possible to apply those principles into our lives, our family, our community, and society at large. So basically, it's just a Bible study time when we come together and study God's word as we grow in our knowledge of this God, in our spiritual journey as children of God, and as people who are walking or in a journey under the same, leading the same or heading to the same direction. So today we're going to continue from where we stopped, and today we're going to continue on chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes book is a very interesting book, but however, let's just read it first. It says, there's a time for everything, from the NIV, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And in verse 9 says, what do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in His time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Verse 12. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing can be taken from it. God does it so that people will fear Him. And verse 15 says, whatever is has already been, and what will be has been before, and God will call the past to account. And I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there, and in the place of justice, wickedness was there. I say to myself, God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge and a time to judge every deed. And verse 18 says, I also say to myself, as for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they are like the animals. Surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. In verse 20, all go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust all return. Who knows if the human spirit rises upward, and if the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth? And finally, verse 22. So I say that there is nothing better for a man than to enjoy their work, because that is their lot. For who can bring them to see what will happen after them? That's an interesting chapter. We began the story of Ecclesiastes when the author was looking for meaning to life under the sun. He went about looking for joy and happiness and human satisfaction under the sun, with the hope that through wisdom, through work, he will be able to find the satisfaction that he is looking for. But unfortunately, he said, I have tasted all, but yet he seems to be lonely and he seems to be empty or to be dead inside. And in chapter 3, here we see that he talks about a season for everything, especially from verses 1 to 8. He talks about a season for everything, time for everything. Having searched for meaning, he began to make observations about life. And these verses, perhaps some of them most well known in this book. He sings about them, and some of us we use them for funerals during our funeral times when we have such occasions. But we observe it as Solomon's observations. and therefore we will make spiritual applications to some of these songs or writings. Let's talk a little bit about the text itself. Doctrinally, it is sometimes misused by the Calvinist and specific statements. Solomon's point: there is a time for everything. Sometimes we need to use wisdom to determine what to do right and wrong. When the Jews refer to time, in this context, probably it's not chronological, it's more of kairos, a linear type of time. He is in search of this time continually, you know. But yet, in the midst of all that, he is not finding the true meaning of happiness as far as Solomon is concerned. To everything there is a season, in verse 1. To everything there is a season. A season designated time, and time in this sense is limited. There are times when one chooses or one choose is wise, or other times we choose the opposite and the right thing to do. We need to think, friends. We need to use our brains. Life is so full of varieties, and life has meaning. But for Solomon, after taste of all, he came to the conclusion life has no meaning. And yes, life will not have meaning if lived under the sun. Anything that is lived under the sun does not guarantee satisfaction, does not guarantee ultimate happiness, does not guarantee ultimate joy. It doesn't give you that um, inner hope and satisfaction you are desiring for or chasing after. A time for every purpose. Indeed, God has set laws in order that will last, like natural laws and spiritual laws. And you are expected to live by these laws in order for you to be able to make it in life. Failure to do so will attract consequences. And these laws are constant and irrevocable. As Christians, we have a purpose and spiritual laws to abide by. A time to be born, in verse 2, bringing life into this world, a time to give birth. This event, we don't have total control over it. It happens when it is time. Spiritually, in Galatians 4:4, talks about in the fullness of time, God sent Jesus to do what? To redeem his own people. And he came at the right time. John 3:3, 1 Peter 1:23, a time to be born again. In the midst of all, are we born again? Have we confessed Christ? Have we given our life totally and wholly to him alone? A time to die. Death too is inevitable, an event also beyond our control, just like giving birth or being born. We can delay it with bad or good decisions, but eventually it will come. But this is not a justification for us to hasten that. Spiritually, we all have sinned and we died. In Romans 6:23 and Romans 5:12. We let the old man of sin die in Romans 6:3-6 and Colossians 3:9. A time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted in verse 2. Harvest times are the most exciting moments when we harvest and begin to enjoy the fruits of our labors. In Genesis 8:21-22, after these flawed promises were made, we can count on seasons and knowing when to plant, harvest, and conclude the harvest. Eventually, when we plant, we expect a harvest, a joyous moment, a happy moment of the season. Wherever we sow, wherever we plant, spiritually in our lives, we will reap it. A time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted. God planted and uprooted nations in Jeremiah 18:7-8, Deuteronomy 7. Spiritually, planting associated with new beginnings. We need to plant the seed of God's word in our hearts, in our lives. John 4:35, 1 Corinthians 3:6, and Luke 8:11 following. And there are times we need to walk away from what we have planted or what we have plucked up. God will in Matthew 13:24-30. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to heal. Our primary focus ought to be to preserve life, treat illness and diseases. That is true of humanity. Spiritually, we need to put to death the man of sin in us. We should kill bad attitudes, bad desires, bad thoughts, bad actions in our lives. We need to put them to death. But let it be for the purpose of healing. In Revelations 3:18 and also James 5:16 and 1 Peter 2:24. A time to break down and a time to build. Friends, things do decay and wear out. This is actually a natural law. They need replacing or repairing, sometimes totally demolishing for us to be able to start all over. Spiritually, we need to be built up. And sometimes this might involve tearing down the old first, the old us. In 2 Timothy 4:2 and then 1 Corinthians 3:10-11. We need to build ourselves, our Christian faith, on the proper foundation in Acts 20:32. A time to weep and a time to laugh. Occasionally, it's not wrong, there's nothing wrong to cry, where it is necessary. And other times, when we need to laugh, it's good. But not useless laughters and ungodly laughters. Friends, we need to weep for evil and the struggles of our brethren in the vineyards. And we need to rejoice when good prevails. A time to mourn and a time to dance. Occasions where these are warranted, like funerals, parties, weddings, festive occasions, is not a time for lustful occasions or a justification for lustful occasion that often involve dancing. Spiritually, there are occasions for us to mourn when we say goodbye to loved ones, withdraw from the ungodly, sinful conduct. 1 Corinthians 5:2, Matthew 5:4. Rejoicing when one is restored or obeys the gospel, or have been enlightened to see the love of God in his life or her life. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather them. Verse 5. A time to accumulate things and a time to throw them. Are we willing, as Christians, as children of God, to change when we need to? Are we willing to adapt to new ways that are more effective? Always within the spheres of God, within the scope of God or God's scope, within God's authority. Are we willing to adapt and to change? To say no to evil, to say no to bad deeds, and to say no to things that do not glorify God and edify the body of God. Are we willing to operate within God's authority? To recognize sin and to do away with it. A time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. There are times when affection is appropriate and other times when it isn't. Spiritually, friends, we need fellowship. And at times too, even within this fellowship, there's also a time where we need just to avoid it, if possible, run away from it. When it's not serving its purpose, the fellowship that we hoped for to edify us, to strengthen us, to mold us, to make us the people that we ought to be. When the focus is lost and Christ is not the center of that fellowship, we need to run away. We need to run away. Or avoid it if possible. If you can't run, just avoid it. Find means of avoiding it. A time to gain and a time to lose in verse 6. A time to search and a time to give up as lost. A time to keep looking, but a time will come where we just need to move on with our lives. This can be found in the lost coin and the lost sheep. Out of the 99, one got lost, and the shepherd finds time diligently to go and attend to the lost one. But at times, we just need to move on. Move on in Matthew 7 verse 6. A time to keep and a time to throw away. Repetitious to ideas already discussed. Ideas that do not add value or don't bring glory to God should be ignored or just cut away. Friends, as Christians, there are things we ought to keep. But there are other things we just need to give up on them. A time to tear and a time to sow. Verse 7. Similar to gathering and casting away, friends, consider mourning, tearing the clothes. But at the end of the day, mend it, and move on. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. We must guard our tongues, what we say and when we say it and how we say it. Sometimes silence is the best answer. Proverbs 10:19. Job 2 verse 13. When things were tough for him, he began to curse God, and I wish he was silent. Many times we are faced with challenges and difficulties and pains and struggles. We tend to question the existence of God or the authority of God. God, where are you? Who is God? Where is he? Where are you? We need to control our tongues. In James 1:19, the author here encourages us to speak where the Bible speaks and to be silent wherever the Bible is silent. A time to love and a time to hate. There are things we ought to love and others we, we ought to despise. Many a time the world seems to mix these two together to confuse us. Friends, as Christians, we should love, but we should also hate evil. We should also hate injustices. We should all hate wickedness and sin. A time for war and a time for peace. This too is inevitable in life. There will be conflicts that needs to be resolved. Might not look pleasant and easy, but ultimately we should pursue peace. Friends, just like the world, as Christians we are at war. But ultimately we should seek peace. How do we seek peace? We seek peace by allowing God to take charge of our lives, to be the center of our activity. The author here seems to be looking for all the satisfaction and answers under the sun. When we fail to live our life within God's authority, life becomes meaningless and life becomes hopeless. But when we engulf our lives under the authority of God, we see meaning, we experience meaning, we have meaning. Is our timing in line with God's timing? There's time for everything, a season for everything. Pleasures, wisdom, folly, work, all don't seem to give us the satisfaction we're looking for and the happiness we desired. Satisfaction is a gift from God, and righteousness is profitable. Work is carried out in time. True satisfaction can be found in God, and that's a gift in itself. Let's desire faithfulness. Let's desire holiness. Let's desire righteousness. And through that, we will find hope and satisfaction. And that we will desire or we will find happiness. Time is measured during period of events in which they occur. There is a time appointed for everything under the sun. And under the sun, there is time. God, world, creation, all this can have meaning for us when we put our trust in God. We can't live our life outside eternity. We can't live at the expense or the exclusion of this God. We have to live our life knowing that God is in charge. God is in control. Even life and death, renewal and change, destruction and restoration, demolition and building, sorrow and joy, mourning and dancing, selecting or selection and rejection, all can only give us meaning when we put our hope in God, when we put our confidence in God, when we ask God, you know what, I want to live my life under your authority. What does it profit when we all toil under the sun? What profit is there to the worker from that which he toils? In verse 9, what is the profit then after all this toil? I have seen the task which God has given the sons of men, with which to occupy themselves. He has made everything appropriate in its time. He has also set eternity in their heart, yet so that man will not find out the work which God has done from the beginning even to the end. Verses 10 to 11. God has made everything appropriate and beautiful in His time. He has put eternity in our hearts, and all the parts of life in time described, when put together, do not equal something meaningful unless you add the part that is outside of time, that's outside under the sun. Finally, in Colossians 1:15-17 to 17 says, He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Friends, we can't fathom God's total work. We can't discover God's total work. But one thing is certain. When we operate under His authority, we will experience happiness and will experience joy. Until I come your way, I pray that God continue to keep you and bless you. Above all, find someone somewhere to be a blessing to and add value to that individual. Ultimately, knowing that our happiness and joy and satisfaction and wisdom and joy and hope in this world only comes from Him and Him alone. So let me continue to play the song that I started here for us to conclude this Bible discussion.
There was a woman that was sick with the issue of blood. For 12 good years, this woman had been suffering, no solution, no solution. My Bible tell me, say, she does suffer so many things from many doctors' hand. When she go to one native doctor,
Okay, friends, have a blessed Sunday and a blessed week. Bye.